we have been given an awesome short story by the curator known as Fable Wolfe. Now this short story is called The Last Astartes, and wow, this is really great stuff. So because of that, I decided to share this with you as Fable Wolfe has shared it with us. So without further ado guys, let's jump into Fable Wolfe's short story titled The Last Astartes. The sun set on a horizon ablaze with flames smoldered with black smoke. Crumbling towers of Gothic rockcrete and metal rose and fell against hillsides spread far between rivers and burning forests. Above, aircraft rushed rapidly past one another, some tearing asunder in great blasts of molten metal. Great dark silhouettes spread between the clouds, exchanging the lances of golden light. The great war in the clouds only paled, however, in comparison to the many small dots that spread across the battered landscape below, sending beams of last fire and inaccurate bullet storms against one another. It was amid this burning cityscape that a large hill rose above the lower clusters of crumbling buildings, enveloped in its entirety by a rockcrete foundation, supporting at its peak a large cathedral. This cathedral supported itself with massive arcs, tipped by golden spikes, standing as steadfast guardians to the great center of worship. Despite the enduring foundation, much of the roof had been torn away by means of explosive force. The straight glass windows cracked and shattered under the mighty rocketry. Crude they may have been. Approaching this great cathedral to the god emperor was a massive swath of green-skinned creatures, dressed in crude metallics, their collective roar amassing as one mighty death knell to their foes. Those that stood before this green tide, that quickly scaled the many rockcrete steps that led to the cathedral, were just 3 men, clad in power armor of crimson, jet, and azure, emblazed with a jagged white skull upon each left shoulder pad. On the 3 Astartes that stood before the horde, one stood clearly apart from the rest. He bared no helmet to hide his stoic features, hair shaved to a neat dark swath upon his head. A flagpole spread up from his backpack, displaying the chapter standard of the Crimson Skulls, its grimacing bleached skull underlined by the high Gothic words, Vindicio Mortuus. The captain's power armor was decorated by garnishments of bright silver, his right shoulder pad encompassed by a massive glaring silver skull that threatened its enemies with the might of the chapter. In his right hand clasped was a glowing chainsword, painted by contrasting black and red, a similarly colored bolt pistol in the other hand. On both his right and left, 2 others Astartes stood. One of them was equipped with a large black shotgun, its muzzle scratched to bolt gun metal and spread with soot from extended use. This battle brother hid his features behind a helmet, modified from that of standard issue, its face designed to mimic the grimacing skull of which chapter was so fond of. It was crimson, the bone of the skull silver, and it complemented its silver-garnished power armor, marked to the right shoulder by a single purity seal. On the captain's left was another Astarte, this one bearing a black and red bolter. Its armor was nearly identical to the other masked brother, save for a lack of purity seals. He stood up with 2 squadmates, steadfast determination in his demeanor, even as he stared down upon the green tide crested above the base of the cathedral. "A fine challenge, wouldn't you say, brothers?" the captain spoke, placing a proud optimism in his tone. "A fine death, I might say," said the Astartes bearing the shotgun. "The greenskins have overwhelming numbers." The captain gave a small chuckle. "Have you no faith, brother Malak?" Malak inspected his weapon for a moment, ensuring that it was fully loaded to meet the first greenskins within his sights. I have faith," Malak answered, looking only outward into the horde as it stumbled its way ever closer to the top of the cathedral, spitting roaring war cries. "Faith that the Emperor shall take our lives this day in his service." The other Astartes, the one bearing the bolter, stepped forward from his battle line and took aim at the top of the steps. "If we die this day, brother Malak," the man said, "then we shall take 100 of these Xenos, blasphemers, 100 for each of us." The captain laughed. I commend your spirit, Brother Marwyn. He stepped forward as well, prompting Malik to follow and reform their battle line at the top of the stairs. But do not forget our mission here. This cathedral is of strategic importance. If we can hold this land, the green tie may yet be broken. The three Astartes raised their weapons at the ready, and Malik's mind was only awash with doubt. Doubt which went against his teachings, doubt which went against his fate, but nonetheless he doubted still. In the end, he feared that their sacrifice would only be in vain. This world had been besieged for nearly a month now, assaulted by the spaceborne hordes of the Flame Treaders Greenskin clan, under the command of war boss Thraza Worldburna. If the orcs should take this world from the hold of the chapter, Malik knew that the future was not just of that of his chapter, but also of all the imperial rule in the sector could very well be lost. But it was not just the strategic importance that fear had in Malik's heart. This world was Lenwyn's prime, a fortress world claimed by the Crimson Skulls millennia ago, and home to billions, including Malik himself. It was from Lenwyn that the Crimson Skulls drew many of their initiates, a world that the chapter would be hard-pressed to retake. A powerful wall slammed into the three Astartes like a cyclone, cutting Malik's thoughts as the greenskins raced towards up on the steps. Some orcs fired shots from their crude shooters, missing or glancing against the blockade of Astartes before them. "Ready, my brothers," the captain asked, revving his chainsword to life. "For the Emperor." The three Astartes joined together in a chorus of battle cries, meeting the orc horde with an equally imposing force of sound. In mere moments, the first of the orcs closed upon them. Malik fired with a spray of his shotgun, blasting back two small greenskins in a splatter of scarlet gore. Marwyn placed two precise bolter shots per target, quickly relieving three orcs of their grotesque heads. The captain did the same with his bolt pistol, killing two before giving a horizontal slash of his chainsword to another. In mere seconds, 8 more took the place of those slain. Malik blasted away two with a pump of his shotgun, one with a whip of his bright hand against the jaw of an orc that had attempted melee. The tusked jaw came loose as teeth scattered, sending the orc to the ground. The captain slammed his chainsword into an attacker, slowly chewing through the screaming xenobeast to spray gore upon the crimson power armor. Marwyn drowned several more before expelling his magazine. Before he could reload, one of the beasts leapt through the air with Chappa aimed for his head. Marwyn reacted quickly, catching the orc by the throat. The Astartes threw his combatant to the ground, and in a moment crushed his skull beneath his armored boot. He reloaded quickly, and turned his bolter to fire back into the green tide. The three Astartes battled in such a fashion for quite some time. Before a click, Malik found his shotgun had run dry. Malik reacted quickly and gripped his gun by its barrel, utilizing now as a makeshift bludgeon weapon. With 2 quick swings, he crushed the skulls of a couple orcs, giving Malik a moment to retrieve his bolt pistol that he kept sheathed on his thigh. The captain had long since sheathed his empty pistol, slashing in twain any orc that dared near his reach. Marwyn too had resorted to his bolt pistol, his bolter now sheathed on the opposite thigh. Despite many greenskin corpses that had piled at their feet, despite the red gore that now painted the silver of their skulled armor, the orc horde had only grown in number. Now each Astartes was forced to take on more than 5 foes at a time, stretching the limits of both their ammunition and their stamina. Finally, there was a small break in the greenskin assault, and Malik spoke to his captain. "We must pull back," he shouted above the bolter fire. "If we retrieve a more strategic position—" "No, we will not give ground," the captain's tones was furious. "The horde cannot breach this staircase." Malik clenched his jaw in anger, but decided against their argument. Instead, he focused his fury onto the oncoming 6 orcs. His bolt pistol made short work of 3 of them, before its magazine ran dry once again. In quick reflex, Malik dropped his pistol to the ground and caught one of the orc by the wrist. With his superior strength, the Astartes pulled the Xeno forward and drove his elbow into the beast's face, shattering its skull. The creature dead, Malik wrenched free from the crudely sharpened war axe in its clutches and hurled it at an oncoming attacker, cleaving the orc's face in two. He then blocked the next swing of an axe with his gauntlet, kicking the attacker back as his fellows shattered behind him. Quickly, he retrieved his pistol, reloaded, and fired back into the greenskin horde. The squad of Astartes, now blood-drenched and exhausted, soon found themselves faced with yet more growing numbers. Empty of ammunition, both Malik and Marwyn had come to rely solely on their combat blades and raw superhuman strength. It was then, however, that the assault seemed to pause. Malik dared not gain false hope. From amongst the rabble of orcs below, the lot of which were now demoralized by the sheer tenacity of their foes, another creature stood tall. A massive greenskin, clad mostly in jagged steel and crude cybernetics, raised a power claw above his head and unleashed in his voice another wah. The horde resumed its attack with renewed fervor this time, and Malik quickly realized that this would be his doom. A massive greenskin, clad in mostly jagged steel and crude cybernetics, raised a power claw above his head and unleashed a thunderous whoa. The horde resumed its attack with renewed fervor this time, and Malik quickly realized that this would be their doom. "Give no ground!" The captain's orders was suddenly silenced by a shower of bullets. Malik watched with a clutch of dread as his leader collapsed to his back, chainsword falling to the ground. The horde only cheered another war cry, swarming towards the two remaining Astartes. Malik acted quickly and raced for the chainsword laying nearby, batting aside an orc that attempted to intervene. He swiped up the weapon just in time to cleave through an attacker, making short work of yet another greenskin. Marwyn, however, did not fare quite as well. 4 greenskins quickly swarmed him, 2 of them falling prey to his martial prowess, before another scored a wound on the Astartes' leg joint. Marwyn gave a growl of pain, however, he fell to one knee. From this kneeling state, he slaughtered his attacker, batting away another, only to receive an axe driven deep into his shoulder. Marwyn killed this attacker as well, but not before another drove a crude blade under his arm, slicing clean through the weakest point of his armor. With that, he was driven to the ground, a swarm of greenskins collectively bludgeoning and chopping at the crippled Astartes. He disappeared under the horde, as the orcs crested the staircase and set their sights on Malik. Revving his chainsword, Malik summoned all his wrath into an ear-splitting war cry. 2 orcs made for him quickly, and he knew exactly how he could maximize their casualties before they could eventually slay him. With his free hand, he pulled a frag grenade from his belt and tossed the pin. Then, with one arcing slash, he drowned an orc and stunned the other. Grabbing the stunned orc under the arm, he slammed his grenade into the beast's mouth and lifted it with a spin to toss it back into the horde. The orc collided with a few others, knocking them back, before a violent blast of gore and flame exterminated dozens of orcs that aimed to fight him. His small victory was short-lived. The large orc, the one toting a massive power claw, now crested the staircase with an innumerable number of orcs at his side. The greenskin wore an insufferable grin upon his face, and Malik was determined to change it. Before the orc Nob could order his subordinates forward once more, Malik roared his own war cry and charged for the big beast. Surprised, the Nob opened fire from twin shooters mounted on his left arm. Each hit either missed or glanced off of Malik's ceramite plating, and the Astartes leapt forward, colliding with the much bigger orc and grappling onto his torso. The Nob stumbled, chopping his claw at Malik's shoulder pad to tear into metal. Quickly, Malik slashed with his chainsword at the claw, tearing through many of its cybernetics, before he reeled back and impaled his chainsword directly into the Nob's face. The orc gave a pitiful screech of agony as chain teeth dug and chewed through green flesh and hardened bone, spraying dark gore and crimson red upon the Astartes' power armor. The orc boys below, stunned by Malik's sudden assault, stumbled back in fear as their leader's blood spattered across them. Several seconds of screaming passed before the Nob suddenly stumbled, Malik's chainsword uttering a deep and sickening crunch. The orc's screams had cut abruptly to silence as he began to teeter backwards. Malik leapt off of the knob and landed nimbly as the orc fell over the edge of the staircase, tumbling downward for all the horde to see. And for a moment, Malik stood silhouetted against the burning sky above, his armor coated in the blood of innumerable foes, his chainsword still growing hungry for the next who dare oppose him. And for that moment, even the orc boys around him seemed at a loss of how to react. This moment stretched on for what felt like quite some time, before one of the orcs finally raised his choppa and yelled, "Whoa!" His fellow orcs joined him in a chorus as they charged once again at the Marine. Several quick swings of his chainsword was all it took to silence them, but yet more quickly crested the staircase. This time, however, the attackers were a little bit different than the rest. Two boys were adorned with crude canister backpacks, goggles, and tubed nozzles. They turned their weapons onto Malik and unleashed a dual torrent of flame, even as their fellow orcs charged towards Malik. The Burnas made short work of the orcs that would have engaged Malik in melee, and so he quickly acted to silence the remaining two orcs. The Astartes charged the shoulder-mounted towards the leftmost Burna boy, emerging from the flames like an angel of death. Terrified, the orc had not a moment to shriek in surprise before Malik's armored shoulder smashed the orc against the wall, stunning him enough to allow the roaring chainsword to tear through his abdomen and spill his guts all over the floor. With that, Malik grabbed the dying orc and lifted him into the air, utilizing him as a shield while the other Burna boy turned his weapon onto the Astartes. The flames enveloped the mutated orc, and Malik was quick to toss it at its fellow. The flames caught the canister backpack of the Burna boy, resulting in a massive blast of bright flame and burning flesh. Among these flames, Malik stood tall, chainsword at his side, ready to face the next wave. Malik fought and fought for what felt like hours, and now his twin hearts could barely maintain the stamina he needed to down every attacker. The orc horde, however, seemed only to diminish in the slightest. Their morale was not lost. Now only individuals brave enough to charge past the staircase would meet Malik in combat, each of them torn to bloody shreds by the indiscriminate hunger of his chainsword. It occurred to Malik that even orcs, in their infinite stupidity, would have by now realized that scaling this cathedral head-on was an ill-fated decision. He had positioned himself well away from the edge of the staircase now, protecting himself from the possibility of the orcs deciding a range attack. Malik had also pulled aside corpses of his fallen brothers, laying them respectfully on their backs with their arms crossed about their chests. In the times between attacks, Malik had a moment to think. He had considered simply abandoning his post, finding a garrison of Imperial Guard or Astartes to which he could lend his assistance. But he had shot down that decision, knowing well that he would likely be punished for insubordination. Yet it seemed that holding this cathedral was a hopeless pursuit. He would die, there was no doubt in that, and with his death nothing would be accomplished. The cathedral would be lost, the orcs given a new stronghold and a greater chance to overthrow the planet. He and his late brethren had guarded this cathedral under the impression that the Crimson Skull's 9th Company would be en route to reinforce, to annex the cathedral as a base of operations at the Greenskin front. But it seemed they were either delayed or would never arrive. Either way, he would surely die before anyone found him. His Vox communicator had been unable to reach anything but static for quite some time, and so he had resigned himself to take with him as many Xenos monstrosities as possible. With a sigh, Malik readied himself for the next wave, and he knew eventually they would come up the staircase. He stood statuesque and determined, and he waited. He waited, and then another hour had passed before he wondered if the orcs had given up. Cautious not to place his head in the sights of any trigger-happy greenskins, Malik peered over the edge of the staircase. The horde had shifted. Now, at the very bottom of the steps, were several crudely designed vehicles rolled up next to the horde. There were turret-mounted weapons on the backs of these vehicles, all of which turned to aim upward and unleashed a swath of impressive missiles. "Damnation," Malik growled, turning tail immediately to find cover. The Astartes raced backwards, and he bashed his way through the cathedral doors, just as the artillery struck its target. Blasts of orange light and black smoke tore through the ceiling of the cathedral, dropping massive chunks of debris down below. The rain of rockreed did no harm to the Astartes within, but the orcs' crude missiles ignited bright flames and crept along the sides of the crumbling building. Showers of fire and debris now fell about Malik as he closed the cathedral doors behind him. Throwing pews forward to block the entrance, he knew well this would barely slow the horde. Stepping back, he readied his chainsword and pulled free his last frag grenade. He knew he'd had to take dozens more with him before he could die. In mere moments, the cathedral doors buckled against a sudden shock, revealing the greenskin horde from beneath a crack. The orcs yelled another, "Whoa!" giving one final slam against the doors to send them bursting open. At the head, 3 large knobs encased in jagged crude metal raised axes and mauls, and ready to charge Malik. The Astartes raised his chainsword and complemented its growl with his own roar, charging to meet the first knob. He swung a massive axe under which Malik nimbly ducked, driving a slash along the orc's abdomen and tearing into some of the green beast flesh. Malik followed the strike with a swipe of his chainsword, deflecting yet another knob strike and sent him reeling. Another 2 strikes killed several more orc dregs before finally its next attack hit. A knob attacked his right, and with a quick slash caught it by the leg to knock it asunder. Another knob's maul was dodged, only to leave it open to a rippling slash across its face. Malik took a free moment to pop the pin from his grenade and slide it between the alcove and the stunned knob's armor, kicking him backward a second later to erupt into a bloody mess amongst the horde. This attack left the Astartes open to a sudden strike from an axe across the helm, knocking him to his back. Stunned, Malik barely recovered in time to bring his chainsword up to block the axe once more, now blade locked with his foe. This massive orc pressed its full weight against Malik's defense, and the Astartes knew full well that his superhuman strength could not hold it back for long. His chainsword screeched and whirred against the metal of the axe, pushing closer to damage him, spitting sparks between the 2 weapons. Seeing only one chance, Malik attempted to maneuver his feet to push the orc back. Apparently more intelligent than his brethren, this greenskin pinned Malik's leg down with his own, pushing hard with his axe. Above the screech of the weapons and the endless roar of the orc horde, Malik could hear or notice something more. It was in this deadlock, the blade inching ever closer to his face, a sudden flash of light caught the partial attention of the Astartes. There was a swift movement behind his foe, and the weight was slowly pushing his muscles to screaming agony. It ebbed until there was no resistance at all. Confused, Malik watched as the knob's grimace suddenly dropped, his eyes wide in confusion. Then, in that instant, the orc's massive body was cleaved in twain, and it fell to either side, spattering blood all across Malik's already blood-stained armor. In a disoriented daze, Malik tore free his mangled helm and pushed himself up. He was aware of swift movements, screaming orcs, and greenskins flying all over the place. When he had finally managed to his feet, the horde seemed distracted, charging and roaring towards some vaguely seen movement amid their large cluster. Only a single knob remained. Back to the Astartes, Malik seized his chance. With a roar of his voice and a rev of his chainsword, Malik impaled his weapon deep through the orc's side, bringing him to his knees with a quick thrust. Screeching in agony, Malik brought his blade swiftly down between the orc's neck and shoulder, eating through bone and flesh until it finally killed the monster. By the time he had finished off his foe, the orc horde had thinned. What once filled a cathedral to its brim was now only a small group of several dozen. Some orcs stumbled back in fear, others already taking flight for the exit, all while a whirlwind of blood and motion chewed through their numbers by the second. Though he knew not the identity of the enemy or his enemy, he decided it would not steal all the glory. Malik charged once again for his foe, ending an orc with each swing of his furious chainsword. The flames that had once danced along the cathedral roof had now crept down around the building, catching some unwitting orcs ablaze, while the corpse-strewn floor quickly drew flame. In a swath of flame and blood, Malik cleaved orc after orc in unison with his unseen ally before only one orc remained. The greenskin's face, perhaps once painted with glee for his odds of success, was now twisted with terror. He fell to his back, scraping away desperately to avoid the wrathful gaze of the Astartes. Malik approached, slowly, revving his chainsword like a death knell for the unfortunate survivor. Just as the orc attempted to jump to his feet and flee, Malik's boot kicked him to the ground. The chain teeth ripped and teared deep into this orc's flesh. His arms dropped limped with one wrench of the chainsword, stilling the final foe that threatened the cathedral. Once the greenskin was dead, Malik turned his attention upward to ascertain who or what had lent him aid. His eyes met nothing but green and crimson corpses, or at least, at first it appeared. But quickly his superhuman vision caught a faint trance. A silhouette veiled in the darkest corner of the cathedral. What could this be? As Malik stood, his face for once calmed of the fierceness it normally carried. A shape silently moved to stand behind him. A feminine form, ablaze with scarlet hair enveloping a black helm. Eyes azure and imposing. She stood statuesque and watched the Astartes with a glimmer of interest. Malik's prayers were oddly calming, yet in his semi-trance the slightest sound of shuffling caught his attention. In an instant his eyes shot open, and he turned a burning glare onto nothing. He glanced behind him towards the cathedral and saw nothing. Perhaps he was going crazy after all. A quick slash, another orc dead. Another slash, yet another dead. Malik had followed this pattern for hours now, fighting amid a sea of green corpses and bright flame for far longer than he had ever fought before. No rest, no respite, no relief from the agony of his overused muscles, nor from the strain of his now gathering bruises and cuts. His armor was torn and scratched, riddled with dents from bullets that the Emperor had so mercifully decided to deflect. His brown hair was now sticky with blood, ruffled from its usual neatness as per the code of the chapter. But his faith and resignation to death had brought him this far. He would push further until his legs gave out beneath him. The orcs had grown frustrated by now, many of them electing to stay at the base of the stairs until their numbers once again reinforced. Along a distant street that curved around a crumbling building below, a smoke-spitting amalgamation of rusted metal and crude paint rolled towards the cathedral. It followed the vague design of a Lehman Russ battle tank, and much to Malik's fury, he realized that the savages had commandeered one of the Emperor's holy war machines. The orc-controlled war machine fired its cannon, and in that moment a sudden weight knocked the Astartes aside. Surprised, he was unable to keep from falling to his back as the blast from the cannon skimmed by where he was standing, colliding with a portion of the cathedral to finally send this unstable structure crumbling to the ground. On his back, Malik's eyes finally bared witness to the elusive ghost that aided him. The woman acrobatically leapt away from him before he could properly react, performing several graceful twists and flips before coming to a halt some distance away. She now made no effort to disappear like she had before, allowing him to scan over the black and white plating that followed her form so impeccably. She carried two long curved blades, humming with a faint energy, and her head was masked in a tall helm, wrapped in blood-red hair. Malik's blood ran cold at the realization. A new Xenos threat, one far greater and one far more intelligent than any orc. Yet his mind was divided. His chapter would want him to kill her on the spot, yet she had as of yet done no harm to him. Quite the contrary, she actually had only aided him in his endeavor against the orcs. He did not know her motives, but he decided that he would take no help, even from an Eldar. Malik jumped to his feet as quickly as he could, retrieving his chainsword from the ground. The Eldar maintained her stillness, moving only to nod her head in what seemed to be a friendly gesture. Malik eyed her for a moment, hesitantly to look away for the fear of her once again disappearing, before he returned the nod. She then gestured with a blade to the sky, prompting him to glance upward. Small black dots had begun to form in the clouds above, steadily growing in size, and it took Malik a mere moment to realize what they were. And a swath of relief flooded him. The cathedral could still be won. In the moment he had looked away, Malak jumped when the Eldar had closed the distance between them, giving him the slightest shove just as another round from the looted tank below skimmed by and crashed into the cathedral. His first instinct was to fight, but he quelled this feeling when he realized she had yet again saved him. In that moment, the dots above dropped down swiftly and collided with the earth at the base of the cathedral stairs, sending orcs flying amid showers of blood in their wake. From his vantage, he could see Astartes adorned in armor not unlike his own, slaying the growing horde in mere moments. When he regarded the Eldar again, to his surprise, she remained standing some distance away. "Why have you aided me?" Malak put his voice into confusion, annoyed by the raspy quality attained through the hours of silence that he had suffered through. She stared at him through the eyes of her helm, her expression shielded by its fierce visage. There was a pause, as if in contemplation, before she spoke with a high-pitched but oddly harmonious voice. "Our interests align, Space Marine." "How could they?" he asked, doubting that she told the truth. "Your kind despises mine." She paused once again, dipping her head in what appeared to be thought. "What do they call you?" the Eldar asked, a question that surprised the Astartes. "Malak," he said after a moment's contemplation. "Brother Malak of the Crimson Skull's 10th Company." "Lythan," the Eldar replied, tapping her blade to her shoulder. "You are a strange Malak of the 10th Company." "How so?" "You stay your hand even before a creature you are taught to kill." It was true that Malak acted against his teachings, and the thought reminded him that the great punishment could result from it. Still, he found that he could not bring himself to strike this woman who had aided him so greatly before. "You saved my life," he said pointedly. "I shall return the favor by sparing yours." And at that, she gave an elegant laugh. "Perhaps then I will have to save yours again, when we next meet." This response gave him pause, and a moment of anger rose to his chest. Did she dare mock him? "What does that mean? Elaborate," he growled. Instead, Lythan abruptly glanced up, prompting Malak to do the same, and it only took him a moment to see the set of drop pods that raced down towards the cathedral, and not a second later he turned his gaze to the Eldar only to find her absence. She had vanished once again, and he cursed himself for being so careless. Nevertheless, her disappearance left Malak with a strange mixture of curiosity and wariness churning in his gut. At the base of the cathedral, the last of the orc attackers were finally slain. Drop pods had landed throughout the wide hole in the cathedral roof, and from them 4 squadrons of 9th Company Space Marines had marched to heroically claim their area for the Crimson Skulls. Malak was met with a fellow Astartes clad in heavy black armor, decorated with bleached white skulls and bones, a signature of the Thanatrum Archon, chaplains of the Crimson Skulls. He stood before the blood-spattered Astartes, and Malak was quick to kneel in reverence. "Rise, brother," the Archon said, prompting Malak to do so. "Have you stood alone, holding this place from the Greenskins?" "My fellow brothers fell some hours ago, my lord," Malak responded. "I simply carried on their mission until your grace granted me reprieve." "Do not hesitate the gravity of your victory, brother," the Archon said. "You have single-handedly tipped the war in our favor. For this great deed you shall be granted much glory." "I only wish to return my brothers of the 10th Company, my lord." This was a pause before the Archon finally responded. "It is to my despair that I cannot grant you this," he said. The words flooded Malak with dread. What happened? "The 10th Company is no more. You are the last of the battle brothers that protected this planet before the arrival of the 9th and 7th Companies." The weight of this realization hit harder than any orc weapon had. "But their sacrifice will not be in vain," the Archon continued, giving Malak a small glimmer of hope. "The 10th Company will be venerated, their stories archived in our Book of Honor, and you, battle brother, will be given the tools to which avenge their deaths tenfold. You will be an inspiration to your brothers and a vanguard of the chapter. As of now, I dub you Thanatarium Archon of the Crimson Skull's 11th Company, the Dead Company." The end. And there you have it, guys, the epic conclusion to The Last Astartes. Really epic stuff, all thanks to Fabled Wolfe. Now, Fabled Wolfe, you did an amazing job here. I really felt like I was right there, fighting besides Brother Malik. Very visually striking with your words. I really enjoyed it. However, I do want to know more about this Eldar warrior that was aiding him. What is her plans? Like, what is this greater thing that she foresees? She did say they were going to meet again, so I wonder what's going to happen. But yeah, really epic stuff, really awesome, really enjoyed this short story. I can't wait if there is a part 2. And yeah, that's really awesome. In the meantime, I want you guys to write down what you guys thought about this short story down in the comments below. Give Fabled Wolfe your feedback. I'm sure he'll greatly appreciate it. And yeah, we'll go from there. And that's pretty much all I have for today, guys. This has been The Sound Alchemist, and I'll catch you guys tomorrow.